Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. In this lesson, we will be wrapping up our series on caged chords by going over some very basic chord theory. Now, before you turn the video off and go, I'm not doing music theory, like forget this guy, let me give you some important reasons for why we're gonna do some music theory today, all right? So I can remember back when I was in college and grad school, we would have these very theoretical conversations about what is music. And what I've always come back to is that music is a language. And when we become fluent in it, we can communicate clearly with other musicians all around the world. I liken learning music theory to learning grammar. And like with our native language, we typically learn to speak and communicate intuitively before learning formal grammar. We can even go through our entire life without ever going to school and studying vocabulary, punctuation, or verb conjugation. But a good education will give us the tools to express ourselves with more depth and clarity. And like grammar, theory gives us the underlying rules and concepts behind music. This gives us a deeper insight into what we're playing and why. Theory also helps explain the reasoning behind the names of chords, scales, and other musical devices. I see many students get intimidated by the idea of theory, and I get it. I struggled with many theory concepts in my youth, and I typically would have rather spent my time playing and writing songs. That being said, the most important part of my education was learning and becoming fluent in music theory. There will be moments of struggle and frustration, but also eurekas in which you feel like you've just been given a key that unlocks a door to the magic of music. Theory will make your brain think faster, and you'll be able to comprehend and internalize what you're playing more efficiently and effectively. Okay, that's my spiel. Now in this video, I want to go over one major foundational theory concept: intervals. In this lesson, we will learn what intervals are and how we use them to build scales and chords. Before diving into the lesson, I highly recommend downloading the PDF associated with this video, which can be downloaded in the link below. There are some important charts, visualizations, and written exercises in there. So if you can print it out, you can follow along and make notes that will greatly aid in your learning. So in previous videos, we went over a few important terms, but I'd like this video to stand on its own, so I'm just going to review some things right now, all right? So a chord. A chord is when 3 or more unique notes are played simultaneously. In this case, the word unique refers to notes that have different letter names. For example, if we play the note G twice in a chord, that only counts as one unique note. A triad is a chord that has exactly 3 notes. No more, no less. A 7 chord is a type of chord that has 4 notes in it. Not all 4-note chords are 7 chords, but all 7 chords have 4 notes in them. Root, the note from which we derive a chord's name. For example, the chords E minor, E sus4, and E major 7, sharp 11 all have the same root note, which is E. Now here are some terms that will be extra important for this lesson. Interval. An interval is a unit of measurement that tells us how far away 2 notes are. Just like how we can measure the distance between New York and Paris in miles or kilometers, we can also measure the distance between 2 notes using intervals. For instance, the notes A and B are closer together than the notes A and D. More frets between notes makes for a bigger interval. All right, and so a half step, I'm gonna grab my guitar for this one. A half step is the smallest interval in music, also known as a semitone. On a guitar, a half step is achieved by moving up or down 1 fret. For instance, if I'm on the 5th fret of the low E string, this note is A. Moving up a half step would bring us the note A sharp on the 6th fret. Moving down a half step would yield the note A flat on the 4th fret. Got it? Now a whole step is the equivalent of moving up or down 2 half steps. So on a guitar, this is done by moving up or down 2 frets. So moving up a whole step from A again would give us the note B on the 7th fret. And if we move down a whole step, you'd have the note G on the 3rd fret. And then there is a scale. A scale is a repeating pattern of sequential notes. They're all different types of scales. We're going to mostly deal with major scales today. A major scale, like a C major scale, sounds like this. Okay? So a chord is when we play notes all at once. That's my piano impression. All right? So we're creating a harmony by playing notes all at once. And a scale is when we play notes in a sequential order. So chord, scale. It is important to note that both chords and scales are built using intervals. I want to focus on chords in this lesson, but let's use a very simple C major scale to get a better understanding of how intervals work. I'll see you over at the whiteboard. All right, I want y'all to grab a pen and paper, but like, no, for real. I'm going to even do it with you, right? Writing things down helps create pathways in my brain that allow me to retain information and learn concepts faster. So let's write it out. We're going to write out the musical alphabet with all 12 tones. This includes sharps and flats. Sharps are indicated with the hashtag, number sign, pound sign, and then flats are the lowercase b. All right? Now, if you don't know the musical alphabet, you're just going to copy more what I write here, okay? All right, not the neatest handwriting, but you get the idea, right? This is the musical alphabet. Sharps and flats represent the same note, just different names. We will get to that in a second. What I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna rearrange this so that we're starting with the note C. And I'm gonna, for now, let's just use sharp so I don't have to write out all the flats, okay? So just use one color here. So C. Now, I know we are guitar players, but looking at a picture of a keyboard can be super helpful, as the keyboard is the perfect visualization of how our 12 notes are organized. If you don't have access to one, feel free to use this online one right here. I've also linked to that down below in the description if you need it. Now, if you have a keyboard in front of you, I want you to notice the white and the black keys. All those notes that I wrote with the sharp sign or the flat sign up here are the black keys. Now let's take the note A, which is a white key. The black key below A is A flat, right? So you got, where's A? A flat. Let me put another A up here. Okay? And then a note, the black key above A is A sharp. But we can also call those notes B flat instead of A sharp or G sharp instead of A flat. So each black key has two names. And the correct name to use will depend on whatever key you're in. But for now, all we need to know is that every black key on the piano has two names, a sharp name and a flat name. What about the white keys that don't have black keys in between them? That occurs between the notes E and F and B and C. Now let's go back to this musical alphabet here. Notice we didn't write B sharp here, right, between B and C, or E sharp between E and F. There's a really complicated reason as to why this is, but for now all we need to know is that the notes B and C and E and F are a half step apart. There are some times where we refer to C as B sharp and F as E sharp, or B as C flat and E as F flat, but these are rare and only in very specific keys. I've used this term half step a few times now. Now, we went over it earlier, but a half step, remember, is the smallest interval, or the smallest unit of measurement when measuring the distance between two notes. So notes that are half step apart are right next to each other on the piano. Likewise, each time you move a fret up or down on your guitar, you've moved a half step. Right, half step, half step. And the whole step is the second smallest interval. It's when we go up 2 half steps or 2 frets. Whole step. Whole step, okay? Let's get back to the musical alphabet, going back to the whiteboard. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna circle the notes in the C major scale. Notice I didn't circle any of the sharp or flat notes, right? They're all the white keys. So this is a nice, easy scale for us to use as an example. Now I'm gonna put some numbers under these notes. Now stick with me. I'm gonna tie this all together, I promise. Here we go. All right, well now, if you wrote that, congratulations. You've just written the intervallic relationship between all the notes in the C major scale in reference to the tonic of C. And you're probably thinking, what the hell did he just say? I'm gonna explain it, I promise. First, let's go over the word tonic. The word tonic is similar to the word root. The tonic is the note from which we get a scale's letter name from. So the C major scale, the C minor scale, and the C Phrygian dominant scale all have a tonic of C. When talking about chords, we use the word root in a similar fashion. The root is the note a chord gets its name from. Like A minor, A9, and A minor 7, flat 5 all have a root of A. Now it's okay to use the word root in place of tonic, but not vice versa. We can say C is the root of the C major scale, but saying the note C is the tonic of a C minor chord would be a little weird since chords themselves can also be referred to as the tonic. That's not really important right now. Just know that the tonic is used when talking about scales and the root is used when dealing with chords. So now we know the tonic of our C major scale is the note C. We can think of each note in the scale in terms of how many intervals it is away from the tonic. Therefore, the numbers we wrote under the scale indicate the size of the interval that the note is away from C. D is a second above C. E is a third above C. F is a fourth, and so on. When we get back to C, instead of calling it an eighth away, so if I had another C over here, this would be 8, right? We actually just call that the octave, okay? So think octopus, octagon, 8, oct, okay? So now let's get back to this C major scale here, and we got our numbers written. What we can do with this is figure out the formula or the recipe for any major scale. So every type of scale, no matter whether it is major or minor or something else or something exotic, it has a very specific sequence of intervals. The same goes for different chord types, which we will get to at the end of the video. Let's figure out the distance between all the notes in the scale. Let me erase. I'm gonna go over this with you. So here's our C major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. We're gonna do the intervals, right? So C to D is a whole step. I'm gonna use the letter W to abbreviate whole step. D to E, another whole step. E to F, look at your piano image. There's no black key in between E and F. It's a half step, so I'm gonna use H. Okay? F to G, whole step. G to A, whole step. A to B, whole step. B to C, half step. So this gives us whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So if we take any note and then start going up using this formula, we will get a major scale in any key. Just to prove this point even further to you, let's take the note E and make it the tonic of our major scale. And what I want you to do, I want you to pause the video, and on your piece of paper, I want you to try to write out the notes the notes in E major using this formula. I'll give you the first note, but then I want you to do the rest from there, all right? So if I go up a whole step up from E, let me put it in blue. I need more colors over here. E to F sharp. That's a whole step. Now, use the keyboard or your guitar, use the frets to get the rest on your own, and then I'll go over the answer. So here's the answer. Ooh, there's quite a few sharps. That's a bad looking sharp. All right. Did you get this right, guys? If not, that's all good. But let me show you, I'm gonna break this down on the guitar. So cut, boom, and then you'll see this out on the guitar. So the notes in the E major scale are E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and E. Did you get it right? Maybe, maybe not. Either way, it's all good. Let me show this to you by playing the E major scale just on my low E string, okay? All right, so E. There it is. Now F sharp, 2 frets up, that's a whole step. G sharp, now on the 4th fret, that's 2 frets up from F sharp, that's another whole step. Now I'm on A, that was a half step up, right 1 fret up from G sharp. Whole step to B, another whole step, 2 frets. C sharp, another whole step to D sharp, 2 frets. Then 1 fret back to E on our 12th fret. Okay? Now if you didn't get this right, it's okay. This takes practice, and I will devote many more lessons to discussing scales and the use of intervals in the future. But for the rest of this lesson, I want to use our understanding of intervals to get a better grasp of chords. All right, let's get back to C major with the numbers written under it. And I'm going to leave the formula up here, the whole half thing. These numbers represent the scale degrees of C major. The scale degrees match the interval that each note is above the root. So let's explore that a little bit. As I said before, D is a second above C, E is a third above C, and F is a fourth, and so on, okay? But now we need to get a little more specific. Some intervals can be either major or minor. D is a whole step above C, so that is a major second. If it was D flat, that would be a half step above C, or a minor second. In this case, it is helpful to realize that the word minor simply means small, and major means big. Major intervals are bigger than minor intervals. If a half step is a minor second, and a whole step is a major second, what happens when we go up 3 half steps or 4 half steps? 3 half steps is a minor third, and 4 half steps is a major third. Let's visualize this. All right, so here's a list of all intervals all the way up to an octave. Octopuses have 8 legs. Octagons have 8 sides. And an octave is what we call an interval of 8, an eighth, okay? If we take any note and go up or down an octave, we will arrive at the same note with the exact same name, but at a different register. The chart that is on the screen now can be found in the PDF down below. So here we go. Let's start with the note C here, okay? So I'm gonna do a half step. So C, C sharp. It's a minor second. Major second is a whole step. C to D. Minor third is 3 half steps. That's C to E flat. Okay. Sounds minor, right? Then we go C to E for our major third. Can also play E over here. And then we have a perfect fourth, C to F. So perfect fourths on the guitar, oftentimes on almost all the strings, are right under each other, right? So C, 3rd fret A string, F, 3rd fret D string. And then we have a tritone, which is 6 half steps. Okay, back in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, it's called the devil's tone, okay? Maybe you can hear why. Then we have a perfect fifth. That's 7 half steps. That's like our power chord, if you know what those are. C to G. Then a minor sixth. No, we're not doing Led Zeppelin today, but it's good to associate these intervals with things that we know, right? So that's a minor sixth, C to A flat. Then I'm gonna go to C to A, or here, major sixth. Then we have a minor 7, which is C to B flat. I'm going to play C here. And B flat, I'm on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string. Okay? Think about these patterns I'm making with my hands, these shapes. Major 7, C to B. And then octave, C to C. One thing about octaves is you can always make an octave like this on the guitar, unless you're on the 3rd string, right? Because the distance between the 3rd and 2nd string is different than the other strings. But if I'm on the 3rd fret of the 5th string, and I play the 5th fret of the 3rd string, that's an octave. And that's true, that shape carries over through the rest of the guitar. So D, D, E, E, F, F, G, G, A, A. the C major scale in octaves. So one thing you may notice is that an octave is 12 frets, right? So you ever wonder why there's 2 dots? I mean, this is a Paul Reed Smith, so there's birds, but if you see there's dots, right? So I have 2 dots on the 12th fret. So now maybe you understand why we do that, right? We want to give a special marking to the octave on our guitar, which is our 12th fret. And the octave actually cuts the string directly in half. So that's a cool thing to know about strings as guitar players, that when you cut a string, whatever pitch that string is, if you cut it in half, you're going to get an octave higher. Pretty cool, right? Now, most intervals are either minor or major, right? So minor meaning small and major meaning big, right? But notice that fourths, fifths, and octaves are not called major or minor. These are what we call perfect intervals. These intervals have less tension in them and are more stable than our minor and major intervals. Now again, we can get into the weeds with this last point. So for now, all we need to understand is that intervals can be major or minor, except fourths, fifths, and octaves. All right, one more time, back to the whiteboard. So how are we all feeling about these scales? We should have a pretty good understanding at this point of how to build a major scale, and also some of these intervals, these minor second, minor thirds, perfect fourths, all that stuff, right? I know it's complicated, but we're gonna move on to chords now. We're gonna use this knowledge of intervals to build the chords. And it should be a little easier now to build the chords that we already know the scale knowledge. All right, so let's get back to our piece of paper. We're gonna get into chords now. But before we do that, I want to rewrite our musical alphabet. So let's start with C. I'm gonna use both C sharp and D flat here, okay. I don't know what letter that was. I don't know what letter that is either. Ah! All right. Now I'm going to put the specific intervals under each note, what it is above C. Okay? So C is just C. I'm going to use a little m for minor and a capital M for major, right? Because minor is small, major is big. Okay, so minor second, major second. Ooh, this is gonna be tough. Minor third. Call this, we're gonna call this flat 5. We're gonna call this perfect 5, P for perfect. I'm gonna do minor 6. All right, it's kind of messy, but you got the idea, right? So now let's recall how scales and chords both follow formulas or recipes. We learned the recipe for a scale is to start with a tonic and then play the following intervals consecutively. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Remember, a whole step is a major second and a half step is a minor second. I know I'm a broken record. And now that we're thinking about formulas, let's move from scales to chords. Chords have formulas as well. Now here is our formula for major and minor triads. And what's a triad? Chord with exactly 3 notes, no more, no less. All right, so major triad, here we go. Equals root, major third, perfect fifth, minor triad, equals root, minor third, perfect fifth. If we look back at that table of all the intervals, maybe I'll try to put it on the screen somewhere here. We'll see that 3 half steps is a minor third and 4 half steps is a major third. Both major and minor chords also use perfect fifths, which are 7 half steps above the root. And then the root note is whatever the chord is named after. So, if we want to play a C major chord, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take C, I'm going to take my major third E, my perfect fifth G. So I would get, let's put it over here. C, E, G. Okay? If I want to play a C minor chord, I need a minor third, so C, E flat, G. Why did I use E flat instead of D sharp? That's where things get kind of complicated, but we don't want to say D sharp because D kind of implies a second above C. Kind of catch my drift. I can get really nitty gritty and get into very granular advanced like theory here right now. I'm not going to do that. Just know on a C chord, the minor third is E flat, okay? So now what I want you to do is I want you to try to figure out what a G major chord is and a D minor chord on your own. I want you to spell those chords. A chord spelling refers to the individual notes in the chord. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out what G major would be and D minor. All right? I'll show you both up here and on the guitar. All right, so G major. Let's check our work here. That's our root. Now, these don't have the right intervals above G, but if I just went like this, I want to make this my root, G. Minor second, minor third, major third. Fourth, sharp 4, flat 5, tritone. Fifth, perfect fifth. 7 half steps above G is D. Root, third, fifth. Okay? Now I know D is below, but you just rewrite it out like this. Okay, D minor. Start with D. It's our root. I know it's always easy. It's just the name of the chord. Then we'll go boom, boom, boom. Getting chemicals through the pores of my skin. Great. D is the root. Minor third. 1, 2, 3. F. And then a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A. D, F, A. D minor. Sorry guys, my handwriting is like worse than a doctor's. But now let me show you on the guitar, all right? Okay, so let's check our work on those chords. A G major chord is spelled G, B, D, and a D minor chord is spelled D, F, A. So, we had the note G. We need a major third, right? So, 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps brings me to the 7th fret of the E string. If you don't know, that note is B. I can also play B on the 2nd fret of the A string. That's kind of like the beginning of our G chord, right? And then D, I can play on the open D string. But if you wanted to check that work of yours, you could go up 7 half steps from G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's our perfect fifth, right? That's G, D, or sorry, G, B, and I'm gonna play D here instead, open D. Oh man, this is our G chord. And then I got G, open G, and then I can play either D or B on the 2nd string, and because you've been doing this theory now, you know that it doesn't matter, you can double notes in the chord, right? So whichever one you want to choose, I'm gonna put the D down and then pinky on G. There's our G chord. Let's do D minor. D minor, I'm gonna start with D here. I'll start with open D. Up 3 frets to a minor third, right? Because we have a minor chord. That brings me to 3rd fret on the D string. That's the note F. So D, F. And then I can count 7 frets from the open string, which just brings me to the 7th fret on the D string. That note's A. But I can also play A here. Okay, so D minor. So I had D, F, A. But I'm going to play F up here. Now I'm going to play D here. So 1st fret, 1st string. 3rd fret, 2nd string. D minor. Now you see why we play the chord that way, right? Now if you look back at the C major scale, you're going to see that all the notes in both of those chords, in the G and the D minor, belong to the key of C major. So, if you were to write a song in the key of C major, using D minor and G major would be pretty good choices. Probably end up making a very familiar sounding chord progression. Those 3 chords, all right? So in part 4 of this video series, we looked at some different types of chords besides our major and minor triads. We learned to play some dominant 7 chords. Remember, 7 chords, 4 notes. We also learned some add 9 chords and chords with suspensions, or sus chords. I want to explain a bit of theory behind these chords and leave you with a few suggestions to practice your fluency in the theory we went over today. So let's take 7 chords first. There are many different types of 7 chords. We have major 7s, minor 7s, dominant 7s, half diminished, fully diminished, altered 7s, and more. I will devote a whole video to the theory behind all 7 chords, but today we will simply look at dominant 7 chords. So with our major and minor triads, remember triads are just the 3 notes only in the chord. We use the root, the third, and the fifth to form the chord. If it is a major chord, we use a major third above the root, and if it's a minor chord, we use a minor third above the root. Now the fifth is the same for both major and minor triads. It's always a perfect fifth. A 7 chord is when we add the 7th note above the root to the chord. 7ths, like thirds, can be major or minor. A major 7th is 11 half steps above the root, or 1 half step below the root. A minor 7th is 10 half steps above the root, or a whole step below the root. So for any 7 chord, we need to play the root and add the intervals of 3, 5, and 7 above the root. Different types of 7 chords use different combinations of major and minor thirds and 7ths. A dominant 7 chord uses the following formula: root, major third, 5th, minor 7. That's right, a major third but a minor 7th. For example, a G7 chord is spelled G, B, D, and F. F is a minor 7th, or 10 half steps above G, but an easier way to think about it is F is just a whole step below G. It's another way to get to a minor 7. Now let's refer back to the musical alphabet we previously drew out, or you can look at a piano to visualize this. You can see all the intervals in front of you, right? Now try to figure out the spelling of the following chord on your own. We're going to do a chord A7. And when you think you got it, go ahead and hit play on the video and I'll walk you through the answer. So if I start with my root, which is A, I need a major third, right, in a dominant 7 chord. So 4 frets up to C sharp. So A and C sharp are my root and my third. Now I need my 5th. So 7 frets up from A. That's E. All right, 7th fret on the A string is the note E. So I have A, C sharp, and E. Now the 7th is a whole step below A. So I'm going to go to A on the 5th string of my E string, and I'm going to do 1 whole step below, which is G. Or I could go up 10 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's G up there. So our spelling is A, C sharp, E, and G. And you know, if you play the A7 that we learned in a previous video, the way we voice that chord, so the order of the notes is A, E, G, C sharp, E. All right? All right, so we got the formula for dominant 7 chords, which are written with just the root and the number 7. So saying E flat 7 is short for E flat dominant 7. There are also major and minor 7 chords, but if like for C major 7 example, we just say C major 7 or C minor 7. Now can you guess what the formulas for those would be? Maybe take a minute to think about it and then you can hit play on the video. Major 7s go root, major third, 5th, major 7th. Yeah, so 2 major intervals. The 3rd and the 7th are both major. In minor 7s, they're both minor. So root, minor third, 5th, minor 7. Now really quick before we go, I know this has been a long video, but I want to hit suspensions and add chords just because we've gone over them in the other videos in this series. A suspended chord is simply when we replace the third of a chord with a 2nd or 4th above the root. When we play a major 2nd above the root instead of the 3rd, we call that a sus2 chord. And when we play a perfect 4th above the root instead of the 3rd, we call that a sus4 chord. Now add chords are very similar, except with add chords, we keep the third in the chord. The most common type of add chord is an add 9 chord. So you're wondering 9, wait, we didn't go past 8. So let's recall the concept of an octave. If I go up an interval of an eighth, I will end up on the same note I started on, just an octave higher. So remember the E string, E to E. If I go one more whole step up, I'll land on the second again, but this time an octave higher. F sharp. We'll call this interval a ninth. So an add 9 is when we play a triad and then add the ninth or the second note above the root, typically an octave higher. So a C add 9 chord is spelled C, E, G, D, or it could be C, D, E, and G. Sound like this, C, E, G, D, and then I'm gonna put G up top, C add 9. An add 11 chord would add the fourth, and an add 13 would add the sixth, but those chords we actually usually just call 6 chords, but don't worry about that today. And in fact, that is it for this lesson. Before we go, let me remind you to download the PDF in the description below. There are many good exercises in there that you'll find to practice all this theory stuff. All you need is a pencil and your guitar. Coming up as a musician, theory was always taught to me using a keyboard. And I think this is really useful as the piano is the best visual tool we have for learning music. But as a guitarist, I want my fellow guitar players to know that they can learn theory without any keyboard knowledge. You can use your instrument, okay? It'll actually give you a better understanding of your instrument. Now I know in this lesson we went into a lot of depth and complicated topics. If something didn't stick, try watching it again or try some of the exercises and then come back to the video. Lots of times theory makes sense after we get hands-on. Many of us will internalize things differently and reach the same conclusions through different processes. So if you're getting frustrated or not understanding something I've said, then try it on your own for a bit and come back. Yeah, and also feel free to leave a comment below with any specific questions, and I promise I will do my best to answer them and get back to you. Either way, I wish you all the best of luck and hope you will find learning theory as valuable as I have. I'll be doing many more theory videos, so stay tuned. So you may want to subscribe, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, go run up a mountain and get to the top and go, yo, everyone subscribe to Pete Cornell's guitar channel, it's awesome. Maybe don't do that. Either way, peace guys, much love.